There was a trial court assembled in the backyard. Someone had taken something from someone else. That was the charge. The dispute was between a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. Under cross-examination, my 6-year-old made his case with utter earnest that he first had this toy. And he said, "Daddy, I had it in my hand first, and that is a true fact." It's one of those moments when parenting where I can't let my amusement take over the role I'm supposed to be playing. I start thinking, I said, "True fact?" Beckett, he's 6. "Yes, true fact, Daddy, it's a true fact." "Where'd you learn true fact?" "At school, it's a true fact." So, well, are there false facts? And he said, "Oh yeah, there's lots of those." Apparently, our looseness with the truth has trickled down to elementary school children. In an age of news that can be faked, in facts that can be picked from, they're emphasizing that it's a true fact. You know, saying it's true should be enough, or it's a fact should be enough, but not today. It's a true fact. It reminded me actually of a great quote from a politician decades ago when he said, in criticizing his political opponents, he said, "It's not that they're ignorant, it's that what they know isn't so." All right. It really gets at something that's true, isn't it? That we know things that actually aren't. What do we do when our knowledge is wrong? When the thing that we have in our minds and hearts, especially when that knowledge might be corrosive or unhelpful to our lives, to our relationships, to who we are, how do we get healed in our minds if what we think and we think we know isn't so? We've been exploring what happens in miraculous moments where Jesus has these events in the Gospels, mostly in John so far. We've seen him turn water into wine. We've seen him tell someone to get up and walk who hadn't for 38 years been made well. Ask that amazing question we wrestled with, do you want to be made well? For it seems as soon as we're made well, there is work to do in service to cause and the kingdom. We've seen him take the bread and the fish, the loaves and the fishes, break and bless and send them out into the field of folks that were hungry. 5,000, they ate their fill. We've seen the miraculous power of God's presence to take what we lack. We just believe we don't have enough, and then we come and bring what we lack to God, and it grows and it multiplies and an abundance occurs, and we are told we are enough by his grace. What we have, that lack we take to the world, the lack grows, we take it to God, and it doesn't grow in lack, it becomes enough and then more than enough. We've seen ordinary, miraculous things. We've seen Jesus heal people from far away, and we turn to chapter 9 of John's Gospel to explore this healing service, this hinge, really, chapter in all of John's Gospel that turns things even more intensely towards the trial that's coming. John has told us in the very beginning that Jesus has come into the world, the Word made flesh, to dwell among his people and to bring light into a dark world, and the darkness could not overcome it. Right before this, in chapter 8, Jesus has gotten an argument with all those who are questioning his authority to do these signs and wonders. How is it that you do these things? Why are you doing these things? Who are you? And Jesus points to Abraham and says, connects his ministry to what Abraham's promise was, Genesis 12, through you and the whole world, through you and your family, Abraham, God says, the whole world will be blessed. I'm giving this land to your descendants that the whole world might know there is a God. And they're like, well, Abraham we know, but you we don't, these oppositions that Jesus says. And Jesus, right before our chapter we're going to read today, has that amazing response where they say, you're too young to be teaching us about Abraham. And Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. They wanted to pick up stones and to kill him for this. It sounds a whole lot like blasphemy, unless it's a true fact. Verse 1 of chapter 9. As he walked along, this is after he walked away from them, after being hid in the temple, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, teacher, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? So there's no doubt, at least in their mind, about what they know. They know he's blind from birth, born with a birth defect of some kind. So that means there was sin in his family's life or in his life. They know this. They just want to know where that sin in particular came about. And Jesus answered, neither. Friends, in a world where people are born with all kinds of challenges, physical, emotional, spiritual, otherwise, and we're so quick to assign blame for that on the behavior of parents or ourselves or others or the person who's received this burden, hear the words of Jesus. Neither. Neither this man nor his parents sinned that he was born blind. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me, while it is day and night is coming when no one can work. As long as I'm in the world, I am the light of the world. Echoes back to the beginning of the gospel, this invasion of hope that John sees in Jesus, this redeeming work for all creation, the Word made flesh and light that the darkness can't overcome. Verse 6, when he said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes. We have to pause here. This is strange. Perhaps you've been hanging out in churches long enough that you think it's normal that Jesus spits in dirt and makes mud and spreads it on their faces. I understand that people pay a lot of money now to get mud spread on their faces in place. That's not something I've ever really been a part of, but it may be something you've done. And I also don't know how, aware of how much saliva it takes to make mud out of dirt. If you're not raising small boys, you may not be as experienced with this. This is not a little bit of spittle. If you're going to make mud out of dirt and the arid place there in the area around Jerusalem is much like the dirt you have in your yard that used to be your yard before it stopped raining, that just dry dirt, how are you going to make mud out of that? It takes a lot. So Jesus really does get this dirt wet. That's odd. We've seen him heal a boy in a town he wasn't in 4 chapters ago. He didn't touch the water that turned into wine. He just sent somebody, and if they just believed and did what he said, amazing things happen in ordinary places. We talked about that. So why, and if I'm this guy, I guess you don't really question if it works, why does he do it this way? Hold on to that. I think there's something in it for us to wrestle with the means and manner by which this miracle takes place. Why does he take dirt, spit in it, and rub it on his eyes? He says, go and wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. You can still visit the pool of Siloam. They found it in 2004. Just 13 years ago, they found the pool. It's at the exit of the Hezekiah's tunnel, a tunnel built by Hezekiah nearly 3,000 years ago to get fresh water into the city when it was under siege. And so it was built through the tunnel. It had a pool for fresh water in the city. This pool is still there. You can visit it. Then he went there and washed, came back able to see it worked. The neighbors, those around him, and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, is that not the man who used to sit and beg? Some were saying, yep, that's him. Others were saying, no, but it's someone that kind of looks like him. And he kept saying, I am the man. But they kept asking him, well, then how are your eyes open? And he answered, the man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and said to me, go to Siloam and wash. Then I went and washed and received my sight. Here ends the reading, the word of God for the people of God. So there he explains again the exact means by which this miracle takes place. Multiple times he will again tell this story. The folks that are hearing this, seeing this, these neighbors and religious leaders aren't real pleased that this event has taken place. They're upset by it. This isn't on the Sabbath. We saw that Jesus got in trouble for the man that he healed 38 years of sitting by the pool hoping to get healed. Do you want to be made well? Take up your mat and walk. And they see him and they're mad that it's on the Sabbath. This doesn't appear to be the Sabbath. Why are they so resistant to this notion? It would appear it's because that restoration of eyesight to someone born blind goes beyond the normal miraculous healing of traveling wonder workers. In the Old Testament, there'd be prophets and they would do wondrous works. They would heal things and things would happen that were amazing. But restoring of sight, that light into darkness, seems to be reserved only for what God can do. And Jesus does it. That's going to make some folks uncomfortable. So it can't be him. It can't be right. I have some other explanation. This has got to be fake news. This has got to be a false fact. There can't be this guy who used to not be able to see and now he can. And he says, look, I don't know what to tell you. This is what happened. So they bring his parents in. I don't know how old the guy is, but he's not a child. But they bring his parents to come give it. Is this your son? Yes, that's our boy. We've all been to that principal's office meeting, haven't we? Hypothetically. And is this your child? yep, that's our kid, but he's grown, ask him. And they ask him again. He gives the story. Jesus spit on mud. He rubbed it on my eyes, and now I see. They said, no, it can't be. How is this possible? And then he says this great line that became a line of a hymn that you probably know. He said, I don't know, I don't understand it, but I know this. I was blind, but now I see. Why does Jesus pick up dirt, get it wet with his own saliva, and smear it on this man's face? Why is that the means by which he brings this miraculous event into our hearing, into the world in reality? It may be that he goes all the way back to the beginning. You know, the beginning when God made stuff and light was coming out and separation from darkness. The word was going forward and chaos became order. Light and darkness get separated, land and water. And then he took a bit of dirt, formed it in the image of himself to reflect him in the world, and made men and women in his image. God's got a thing for dirt. Have you ever noticed that? Then he puts them in all this place, all this stuff grows, and it's great, and until they wreck that, that's where they live, and he kicks them out into some other dirt. And then when he's trying to put it right, he calls Abram, this Jesus has just been talking about, and says, Abram, through you and your family, I'm going to bless the whole world. Come and follow me. I'm going to give you what? A piece of dirt. This particular piece of dirt. And he goes and lives in that dirt. And as long as they're doing what they're supposed to do in the way that God's called them to live, they live on that dirt. What's the punishment of Israel over and over again? They get exiled from the dirt. Exodus, they return back to the dirt. The promised land becomes a crucial piece of the story of who Israel is, the people of that land. We live here. So much so that when they're in exile, we have the lamentation that says, how can we sing Yahweh's song on foreign soil? Dirt matters. It's really mattered to every people who have ever lived until about 75, maybe 100 years ago. Dirt matters. And that little piece of promised land, it's unique in the world. Not for what's in it, but for how it functions within the world. What happens on that little piece of land is going to be heard in the whole known world of the ancient world. It's the land bridge that connects Africa, Asia, and Europe. There's a Mediterranean Sea, which is unpredictable, stormy, GPS is hard to come by, and not Romans and Greeks don't really want to get lost at sea. There's a desert all to the east that you don't want to walk through. There's a sliver of land with the ocean on one side, mountains and desert on the other. That little sliver is Israel. And until the 20th century, when you could fly over it, it became this most crucial little land bridge between Asia, Africa, and Europe. So things that happened there would be heard along the trade routes. All of them run right through there. So what happened there would be heard in the whole world. The promised land isn't unique for what's in it. The promised land is unique for what it makes possible when news is worth hearing. If you ever wonder why God chose a piece of property, that bit of dirt, it's because that dirt connects all the other dirt. God's got a thing for dirt. He tells Moses at the burning bush not to stand on his dirt improperly. Take off your sandals because the ground you're standing on is holy ground. God does good work with dirt. And here, Jesus takes dirt, gets it wet enough to apply it to his man's face, and changes the way he sees everything. He's born anew to a whole new world of perception. Now I believe that's exactly how God still works. That miracle, that sign and wonder is still available for us if we want to be made well. We might ask why we don't see it already. We might ask, who has sinned that we're closed off from that? And God says, nope, this is about revealing the power of hope within you. I've been to O'Hare Airport in Chicago. Anybody been to O'Hare? Yeah, I've been there. I've changed planes in Chicago almost a dozen times. I've never left the airport. Well, I'm here now, but I got trapped by poor syntax there. I got on another plane and left there by air. I never went into is it the Miracle Mile there, or whatever they call it? I never had tea with Oprah. She never calls. That's her town, right? And so I've never been to Wrigley Field to see a baseball game played. I've only been to the airport a couple times, a lot of times actually. But if I told you I'd spent a lot of time in Chicago, you'd say, where? And I'd say, well, the airport. And you'd say, well, that's not how it works. Right, because airports are this floating bit of sort of artificial life. No one lives there. No one that's doing well in life is living in an airport. Or you might work there, you might pass through there, but you don't live there. Too often, friends, we think of the church and community like an airport, that we live there. The airport exists that we might get from there to the dirt that we're sent to. It floats above. We need to get out if we want to know about Chicago. We want a Chicago dog or a pizza that's 4 inches deep. You got to leave the airport and go be among the people and talk about what they're afraid of, what they love, what they're about, what they do, and what they eat. And then you would be a little bit more of a pilgrim and less of a tourist. Here, if folks come to San Antonio and all they tell you about is the Riverwalk, you'd be like, okay, you don't live here. What it means to live on dirt means to know what happens there on Tuesday, what the weekends are like, what people eat, what they're afraid of, what they love, where they raise their children, where they argue with their spouse, where they go to get their stuff clean, where they go to get it dirty. That's where our dirt is. That's where life is lived, on dirt. And it becomes amazingly sacred and holy ground by the presence of those who live on it. It becomes special, doesn't it? The streets we walk on, the roads we drive on, the trees under the shade we sit, the places that we eat, the places that we play, the people that we know, it becomes our dirt. We have dirt that we're responsible for. I've got a map I think they're going to put on the screen for you. There it is. You should recognize that. It's your dirt. The red on the top to give you orientation, that red hazed out area is Camp Bullis. To the west there is Government Canyon Park. They give you an orientation. The big arcing loop on top is 1604. The inner one is 410. To the north, the line is pretty close to Bernie and up 281. That's I-10 and 281, and then 16 is the west edge over there. That highlighted space right there looks a little bit like a home plate, doesn't it? That's not an accident. I like baseball. Go Astros. And there is a point right there. The point actually conveniently points right to very close to where the old Woodlawn Church is and was located, that this church was born out of. So we ran a search on attendance here at the church over a 6-month period. Look for multiple attenders over a 6-month period. And the primary space all of those people reside in are in the lit area that's home plate up there. Now, they don't live in Camp Bullis. We used to cut that out, but then it looked like upside down pants, and I like home base better. So that's the area. Now, people come from other places. Somebody after the 8:15 said, well, I live outside of that. And I was like, you're welcome here. But the density of people, primarily, that's where folks come from. It's about a 20-minute drive is the edge of our place, except for the South 410, except for the Woodlawn Saints that are still with us for the most part. That 410 barrier is a real one for us for a number of reasons. All the way up to Bernie, and then up almost to Bulverde, and all places in between. That's where you're coming from. That's our dirt. Jesus says it this way at the end of Matthew's gospel about the purpose and mission of the people of God. Go and make disciples and baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey all that I've commanded you to know and do, and know this, I am with you always. Before there was a church, there was a mission. The church doesn't have a mission. The church exists to fulfill that mission right there, to make disciples, to baptize folks, to learn to obey what God has that's good for us, and to know that Jesus is with us. In Luke Acts, we're told that we're going to be witnesses, that Jesus tells his followers, you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in Judea, in Samaria, and the ends of the earth. This, friends, we believe, where the church actually sits, the acreage that we are on right now, that's Jerusalem. That's the town. The home plate that's up there right now, that's Judea. That's the immediate area in which most of us live, work, play, and do that work. The areas around it, that's Samaria. That's the neighbor. And then the ends of the earth will be off the map. We'll be involved in mission in all those places because that's the calling of the church. But the primary place, the principal focus of the work of this church will be in that lit area. Won't be the extensive, all of it, but the primary place where we're going to make a difference, to bring light to darkness, to pick up dirt, and to pour so much water of baptism on it becomes mud, and then to cover those places where darkness is reigning and winning until the glory of God is revealed, is going to be in that lit section on the home base. Because that's where we spend most of our time. Because mission happens at the kitchen table with our kids. Mission happens at work when we're being the one who tells the truth and showing kindness and love and loyalty, that God's glory might be revealed in us. Mission happens on the golf course, at the sports events that you attend to. We can make that into a spur and point to the stadium if you want. All the places that we go and we cheer and we live, that's the place where mission is called on us to be about. That's our dirt. And here's the thing about getting serious about mission. It doesn't just heal the places that we're sent to, it changes the way we see things. It transforms the schools and the people and the marriages. In that little highlighted area right there, we ran the demographic stuff. Last census, 550,000 people live on that little home plate. 550,000. In 5 years, another 100,000 people are projected to live inside that highlighted area. That's good news for some of you, and that is tragic news for others who remember when this was the edge of town. 550,000 people. 100,000 of those are in kindergarten to senior year of high school. 100,000 students, K through 12. 125,000 marriages represented on that map. These are the things that exist on our dirt. There's a bunch of schools, there's parks, there's people, 550,000 of them. And then on a given Sunday here, like today, we'll have over 2,000 some odd people come to worship in the many services that happen at university. And that's great. We're excited about that. We're growing. That's wonderful. 550,000 people. Now, over 2,000 people, I know listening right now, you come here every single Sunday, but some of the people around you, they'll miss next week. And some of the other people around, I know y'all call each other and you say, I'm going to go this week, and then you can have the assigned seat next week, so you come. And so we probably have really about a little bit over 3,000 really active attending people here at university. So let's say 3,500, let's be aggressive and say 3,500 people committed and coming to be a part of what God's doing at university. 3,500 people. 550,000. So you see, as we get serious about our dirt, it changes the way we see the world, I hope. It fixes our knowledge, that thing that we know that's wrong. One of the things we think we know that's wrong in church life sometimes is that the Baptists, the Presbyterians, the Catholics, the Church of Christ, those are the competitors or maybe even the enemy. Absolutely, positively not. 550,000 souls are at stake on this dirt. So the Baptists, Oak Hills, Colonial Hills Methodist Church, these are not enemies, but fellow pilgrims in the work that we're called to, because 3,500 people, while great and has high capacity to do things, isn't all that God has marshaled to be a blessing to that home plate, is it? So now we see them differently. We say these are fellow workers in this field, which we've been called this dirt, where we're called to pour water out until it's malleable enough that we might see differently. So what we're asking is that you leave this place and explore the dirt, both Judea and Samaria, because one of the things this church is called to do is build bridges between things. You see one out over Zavala. We believe we're uniquely gifted with the capacity to build and connect things not connected. So one of the things we're going to do is work on how do we connect Judea to Samaria, all the neighborhoods around that, especially South San Antonio and downtown. How do we become a part of connecting Christ and community and compassion with bridges, connecting those things to what God is doing to those places that light might rule in the hearts and hopes of those who live there. This is what we're called to be about. This is the mission of God's people, to make disciples and to baptize even the dirt, that we might see and be different. So we're asking you to go and we're asking you to pray. As you sit and you walk and drive around, these aren't just streets that you drive on. This is the mission field that God has called us to. These aren't just schools that sit next to us. This is the mission field God has called us to. These aren't just places of work. They aren't just restaurants. They look like golf courses. This is the mission field God has called us to. What would it look like on our streets, at our work, in these schools, if God got what God wanted in those places? If the mud and dirt and water came together in such a way that the vision and glory of God was revealed, as Jesus said was the purpose. Because I'm here to tell you, a lot of folks are convinced that sin and darkness, death and decay are more powerful than anything else in the world, that they'll determine the course of our lives, the course of our children's lives. I had just finished my first year, I think a semester and I'd done a year and a half of seminary. It was the Christmas break of that second year. I was going to get married in a few weeks, and I was home hanging out with my folks at their place, and I went for a walk on the streets that I grew up playing yard football in, and court basketball, and capture the flag, and all kinds of other things on that dirt. And I went for a walk. Dad and I went for a walk in the neighborhood. And I can't remember why we started walking, but we just walked around the neighborhood. And we started talking, and I think I've shared with you this strange thing that has happened in my life. I don't know if it happened in yours. But I was 17 years old, left home, and it's amazing how much smarter than my dad I was. I mean, I knew a lot. And he didn't know nearly as much. He was wrong about a lot of stuff, and I was pretty smart, which, I was rooting for him to figure it out. And here I am 4 or 5 years later. I'm a year deep in grad school, about to get married, and don't tell him, but he was right about just about everything. I mean, I remember arguing. He would say nothing good happens after midnight, and I would say, Dad, everything good happens after midnight. He was right. So we were walking along, talking about stuff, and we're talking about where I'm at in school and kind of what may be coming next for me, and getting married and all the, I'm asking him, I'm trying to figure things out, I don't know. And he stopped walking. And I remember looking back at him, and he said, so you're going to be okay? I don't know, I think so. And he said, well, it's just that after your sister, I wondered if all of y'all, if we messed you all up. See, my older sister struggled a lot. And then she got really, really sick. At that point, she'd been sick a couple years. It would be 5, 6 years before she died. And this amazing thought washed over me in that moment. My dad thought it was his fault. And I wondered, how could he think that? And the disciples asked, who sinned? That this brokenness and pain invades so many parts of this world where it doesn't belong. And Jesus said, no, it is not your sin, nor the darkness that will speak loudest and longest about the world or about you. This, friends, is what we must be witness to. What's at stake on this dirt is a whole bunch of people who think this moment, this day, they woke up this day in full-on despair, whether they know it or not in their heart, captured by agony and anxiety of life because it's so broken and hard, because it sure looks like in their world that darkness and death, the sins they have known, whether they call them that or not, the mistakes of their parents, the mistakes they have made, will determine their future and shape their life. And Jesus says, no, it's the dirt and the water poured out upon it by the grace and power of what God has done in Jesus Christ that will shape the future, that will determine the outcome for those who will simply receive it. And it will change the way we see, the way they see, the way we are, and we'll go and give witness, even though some folks won't believe it. Like, no, you're not those people. You're not that story. And we'll say, because it's all we'll have, look, all I know is, I used to be blind, but now I see. The victory of God is our story and our song. And that victory is over darkness, death, and decay in all its forms. So what we're going to do, friends, is we're going to pray really hard on this dirt. We're going to pour as much baptismal water as we can find on all that will come to receive it. We got one at 11. I can't wait. Baptism's great. And all those who have been baptized have been called and sent. That's the name of the pool, the sent people, sent out that they might give witness and get to work on bringing light to dark places. So we're going to pray hard about this map. I know it was in small detail here. You're going to get your very own. I promise it's going to be on the walls of this church for a long, long time. So it'll orient and aim us at our purpose in this place. And we need to look at that map and think, where does God's heart break? Where does God's heart break? Where is it nothing like God would have if God got his way on these streets? And that's where we go to work with hands and feet. Or we find others that are already working there and support them. You notice Jesus didn't say, go get a program together and start a nonprofit. Those can be great. We'll do that. We've done it. We'll do it some more. What it really means is every individual who's been washed in the water and claimed by the blood have been sent on mission to testify. That's where you have a matching t-shirt and where you just go to work, where you raise your kid, where you take care of your aging parents. These are the places that we're called to be on mission. Mission's not a trip. It's the reason we exist. Mission's not a place we go on a plane, not exclusively at least. And mission's not living in the airport. It's getting on the dirt, loving and knowing our neighbors, and loving them because it changes and transforms how we see and who we are as we become more and more like the image of the one who called us into light in the first place. Let's pray. Lord, open our eyes to the passion you already have for the dirt we're sent to the refugees down the street, to the marriages that are struggling in our midst, to the children that we're raising here, to the seniors that are our stewards in our custody to be loved and not to be lonely. Show us, Lord, where your heart aches and is poured out with water and with grace upon this dirt to which you've called us, that we might be clear about our purpose and passionate with conviction about the reason that you've placed us here. Lord, we believe and we claim it is not an accident that we sit here on the corner of Zavala and Vance Jackson. And so now in the places that we live, work, play, and celebrate life, may your joy be complete in us. May your glory be revealed. May we give witness to your light breaking forth into the darkness, that all those places where folks question, where is it that sin has become so dominant that it demands this brokenness continue forever, that we respond in love and grace to those to whom you've sent us. We respond with hope to those to whom hope has been a stranger, that we might too live in the light of day as Jesus work among us, in us, through us, Lord, or in spite of us. For it's in his name we pray. Amen.